Smacking the microphone works too. I suppose wicking the microphone works too.
I give it a good wick.
It makes sound, so you can edit
You
it later.
Line it up. I guess line is like one word you don't do that with.
Line it up better.
Line.
John, like if you transliterate, or not transliterate, but like in New Zealand, John Wick would be like John Whack, but they pronounce it the same.
John Wick. John Wick.
He's gonna kill the guys
He's
who
gonna kill
shot
some
his
guys.
dog.
His dog.
He's just gonna pump him full of lead.
He's gonna do
All
some
sorts of bullets.
Gensu.
There might be a knife or two in there.
If some of them aren't dead,
Yeah, somebody's got a knife in them.
if they're not dead, the paramedics are going to need to do. Paramedics are going to have to do some CPR. Medic, something like that. All right, now I'm just going a little British.
It is hard to maintain one when you can kind of do all of them.
Me duck. I know. I was helping with some Koinonia stuff, which is a retreat that our Newman Center puts on. And we were waiting for something, and so I was just kind of going through my accents. And I was kind of tired, so I had a hard time like shifting between the accents that I do. And so like I would start doing like New Zealand or something, and then it would shift into Texas for some reason. So I guess they're both south.
I'll tell you what. I'm gonna go down on the Barbie. I would just watch, like blending them.
Yeah, I would watch Australian King of the Hill. That would be so much more entertaining.
I bet that Djibouti dubs guy. No, what's his name? There's that channel that does the Australian dubs of things.
Djibouti dubs.
Scarnan cunts. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds right. He's probably the Australian Djibouti dubs or whatever. But yeah, that'd be kind of entertaining. It's just like the slang that they use is for different words. It's nearly impossible to understand sometimes for rubes like us who are not learned in the ways of the Beck. No, it's awful.
You know, us from up north there, we have a hard time understanding most people.
Yep.
And most people have a hard time understanding us, so, you know.
After I got back from doing a little pheasant hunting this morning, which would explain my slight grogginess, my brother and I were eating some pizza and watching this TV show called Impractical Jokers. So these four guys have each other do these different dares and practical jokes. And if they don't do it, like go out in public to random people, and if they don't do it, then they have to do something embarrassing at the end. And so there was one where they had to pretend that they were working at this grocery store, and they were posing. Two of them would pose as two employees, and they would have to try to get a random customer to relay messages back and forth until one of them gave up or they couldn't get the person to do it again. And they had this one lady delivering messages for them for like 15 minutes. And so, like, at first she was a little annoyed, and then I think she got to a certain point where she just kept going. And they were making up like this narrative that was just kind of fantastical and ridiculous as it went along. And she was just like, okay, I'm sort of in it now. I got to see how this ends. So it was pretty. At that point,
the sunk cost fallacy set in, and she had to just see how it ended.
Yeah. Yep. But it was a beautiful morning to be out pheasant hunting. We didn't get any pheasants until we were about to leave, and I shot one.
Mm-hmm.
But it was good. We finally taught my brother's dog how to at least find pheasants. Well, she can fetch now, a little bit, but she's still not quite used to the whole feathers in the mouth thing. But she'll find
wow.
them, so that's something at least. She'll just stand by it until you come get it, which is better than nothing.
Baby steps.
Yeah, baby
Or
steps.
puppy steps, I should say.
Yeah, 4-year-old puppy steps.
She's
She's
4 now?
Yeah,
Hmm.
she's a matured dog, I would say at this point. How are things in seminary land?
Seminary land is everything happening all at once.
I suppose getting you guys ready for the Christmas break.
We are departing on Tuesday,
Okay.
so
I suppose, is this the last pre-Thanksgiving episode we'll be doing remotely?
yep.
Sweet.
Well, we'll probably be doing one more because I'll be spending Thanksgiving week in
Wisconsin, right?
La Crosse. Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
have to figure out what we do or don't do for podcast recording over Thanksgiving
Well, because, I mean,
week.
this episode will come out on Monday, so that'll cover Thanksgiving week. And I imagine, rather, you'll probably be in. When are you planning on getting to Fargo? Fun podcast stuff, guys.
Probably Sunday.
Okay. So, well, we'll figure it out. You guys will get an episode one way or the other. It's just a matter of when. Maybe we release on a Tuesday or something like that.
Maybe we could record at your place and get my brother, your brother-in-law, to do the Batman episode.
Oh yeah, we could do a Batman episode with Andrew.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
That would be fun to do at some point. Anyway,
What's new with you, Nathan?
I mean, not a lot. I'm just kind of trucking away at school.
Just solid blocks of school.
I'm still working in the same places I've been working, and not a lot new's been going on there. So it's just, I don't know. I'm approaching finals, so a couple of my classes have we've covered all the material, so we're gonna drop lectures entirely and just do some projects and do some labs, and then do the final exams.
How long of a Christmas break are they giving you guys now this year?
A couple weeks.
Okay, so the standard.
It's
That's right.
pretty standard. I'm not
Yeah.
sure how coming back post Christmas holiday will be,
Mhm.
given how skittish people are in general about
Yeah,
things right about now. Just because
interesting to find out.
the big cough is being a problem,
Yes, that it continues to do.
which
For now, things are looking better. So hopefully this time next year, we will be going on our merry ways without too much extra concern.
we've been saying that all year,
I know.
and this time next year keeps getting further and further away.
One day
Does
at
it
a
though, or
time.
is it always, or is it always 365 days away?
It is.
It's always 365 days away somewhere. Or is it 5 o'clock? I forget.
This time last year was this time this year, but last year.
Mm-hmm.
And this time next year is this time last year, 2 years from then.
When will then be now?
So
Soon.
we are not talking about Spaceballs, incidentally.
Incidentally not. However, we are talking about, well, we're the Palladium Papists. I'm James.
I'm Nathan,
And I'm Riley.
We are talking about
incidentally.
Scott Pilgrim. Is it
Versus
versus the
world.
world? Okay. I always want to say Scott Pilgrim saves the world. I'm like, no, that's not
He doesn't
right.
save anybody except himself and a couple of ladies.
Yeah. But yes, another one of our boy Edgar Wright, one of his films, probably one of the
Yes.
ones. I mean, because he made Shaun of the Dead, excuse me, and Hot Fuzz and World's End, which were kind of cult classics. But I think this one, I forget when it came out, but I want to say it was probably like
2010.
what 2000.
2010, I was thinking.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
probably when he kind of broke into, I mean, it got into a lot of people's attention, I suppose.
Well, I think it's partly because this is a little bit different from his normal style because he's adapting his style to fit an indie comic,
Yeah.
like an internet comic. So that's part of the why it probably broke out better than the other ones. It's because it was based on source material people were already interested in and excited about.
Just think this movie and how close we were to having Edgar Wright direct Ant-Man.
Oh, dude, that would have been awesome.
Like, you can still kind of see his influence on it here and there. But
What dumb thing did he post on Twitter to get him kicked off the project?
I think it was more just because the whole MCU canon maintenance thing, he kind
Sure,
of felt creatively restrained, is my understanding
Sure.
of the deal. So, and he kind of likes to, be flexible and creative with his works. So,
Because, boy, are they flexible and creative.
oh yeah, in all the
Although
best ways.
He had to adhere to the narrative of a comic book in this movie. So.
Yeah,
But the
but
particular
not,
style
like,
of
strictly.
that
You
comic
could play
book
around
just
with it a little bit. I feel like
Your headphones again, man.
I know. I literally like hold them and like twist the audio jack around to make sure that it doesn't crap out.
Make your point, Riley.
There you go.
I think the particular style of comic book that Scott Pilgrim is totally fits the way he does films because it's just so wacky and out there that he has a lot of leverage to do his thing creatively with the film.
It plays a lot with the medium.
Oh yeah, which is something the comic did, as I understand,
Yeah.
to its respective medium. I haven't read it yet. I'm not sure if I will. Given there's some, it's an internet comic from the early mid 2000s, so there's some weirdness. To
So
it.
what's the deal with this Scott Pilgrim guy?
Well, this Scott Pilgrim guy is 22-year-old kind of, I don't know, couch potato that lives in Canada, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
And he plays in a band, which is like the thing he actually enjoys about his life. That's sort of the hobby that he finds joy in. And he's the bassist for the band. And
Played by Michael Cera, who I guess
yes.
plays bass in real life, apparently.
Michael Cera is just the perfect person for this character.
Yeah.
Like, Michael Cera gives off the impression that he just kind of accidentally walked into a Hollywood film studio one day and just like fit the role perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And so
That's a
like,
lot of his roles. He just sort of.
how is this
get
guy
that
an
feel from him.
actor? Like, how is this? I don't understand.
He just plays himself in every movie.
Yeah, he does.
But they write to him in every movie,
Yeah,
so it works.
But anyway, he's dating a young lady named Knives Chow, who is 17. So yeah. I forget what the circumstances surrounding it are, but he has a dream about this girl. Who isn't Knives, some different girl he doesn't know.
Mhm.
And then he gets a package from Amazon. Mind you, this is 2010, so this is before they were like a huge
Well, he
thing.
goes to a party and I think runs into her first.
Maybe.
Or wait, I didn't watch this that long ago. So he has this dream about the girl, and I think he sees her, and he's like, "Who's this girl?" And he asks people he knows, and somebody tells him that's Ramona Flowers. She's gonna be at this party tonight, and he and his friends are at the party, and so he tries to find her and meet her. I think that's kind of how it goes. And then after the party, he orders a package from Amazon because he found out that she delivers packages for Amazon. A book specifically, because that's what they did back then. And in modern day, whenever this was, 2010.
Which probably a little bit earlier, given the
Yeah.
time frame between writing the comic and making the movie and stuff.
And so he orders the book so she'll show up at his house, and he asks her on a date, even though she's dating this other girl.
Who he hasn't broken up with yet.
Yep. And she's 17, so.
It's
So
all very strange things. But, so his band goes in to play this battle of the bands. And it's like a competition that their band is going for. And Ramona is apparently also going to be there, so his goal is kind of to impress her with the band. She's kind of a punk sort of
Kind of
rock
rebellious
personality.
lady.
Yeah,
Yeah,
rebellious
dyed hair.
personality. All that stuff. So
Before the Battle of the Bands, Scott had received this weird email saying this guy wanted to battle him for some reason, so he deletes the email and goes on. And then they go to Battle of the Bands.
yes. And what happens at the Battle of the Bands?
This guy shows up and he's like, I'm going to fight you. He's like, wait, what? Like in the middle of a song.
It turns
And
out
he's like, didn't
was
you
he
get
in the
my
other
email?
band?
What's that?
Was this guy in the other band?
No, he just shows up.
Yeah, he just
shows up and he's like, I'm going to fight you. And he's like, who are you? Didn't you get my email? That was you? And so he's like, yeah, I'm Ramona Flowers' ex. And
I'm from the League of Evil Exes. And
Yeah.
we have to all fight you in order to for you to date Ramona.
yeah. And so he gets into a fight and Scott beats him and he explodes into a pile of coins like it's a video game. It's sort of fantastical. Well, because the movie seems like semi-normal up to that point, and then
It just goes off.
this
the
fight
rails.
sequence is where things start to go off the rails and you realize this is a different kind of movie.
I mean, there
Yeah.
were hints of it being a different kind of movie up to this point.
Right, but this is where it's like concretely like, oh dang, yep, this is gonna be a little different. It's very stylized, is what this film is.
oh yes,
So
what
there are 7 evil exes, and Scott learns that he has to defeat all of them in order to date Ramona. So he breaks up with Knives because he's like in this now.
Mm-hmm.
He's going for it, and then he gets attacked by subsequently, the next 3, who are one of them is like
Chris Evans.
Chris Evans. Was he the
Who's like-
skateboarder guy or the vegan?
No, he's
guy?
the movie star.
He was the skateboarder guy.
He was the skateboarder guy, and then there's a superpowered vegan guy.
he has superpowers because he's vegan and better
Right.
than everybody else.
And the vegan guy is dating Scott's ex, who dumped him hard. So it's a pretty loaded battle of the exes for him, emotionally speaking.
I forget what he does in order to.
He tricks him into
To-
drinking a cup of coffee with real milk in it.
And then the vegan
Yeah.
police show up and arrest him for his third strike.
Yeah.
Because apparently chicken isn't vegan.
Yep. And there's one other thing that wasn't vegan.
It was
And so they take away his vegan powers, and then Scott punches him into a pile of coins.
Yep.
I think the
And-
skateboarder guy, he tricks into doing a doing a rail that's ridiculously long, and then he goes down in a blaze of glory and a massive explosion of coins.
Yeah, so Scott continues to beat more and more evil exes, and he's also getting like really irritated with this whole process, so he breaks up with. Does he break up with Ramona or does she break up with him?
I think it's mutual. Like they get into
Yeah.
a fight about it after he beats one of the evil exes because he's sick of her not being transparent with him, and she's sick of him being annoyed and not understanding.
So yeah, and then so there's like this even bigger battle of the bands that they get to go to because they won the last one,
Mm-hmm.
and there's 2 more evil exes at that one, which they both subsequently defeat.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens after that?
I think at that
Yeah.
one, she's under. He sees her like at this point they've been separated for a little bit, and he sees her at this battle of the bands with this guy who is like this music producer called Gideon Gray, I believe.
I know his name is Gideon. I forget what his
Yeah, Gideon.
last name is.
And he's like, and he's got like this whole green aesthetic, and she's dyed her hair green, and she's with him now, and he's kind of crestfallen about that. Let's see. And then I think he finds out that she's actually being controlled by him, Ramona is being controlled by Gideon, who has planted a chip in the back a computer chip in the back of her neck or something.
Also, Gideon is the last Evil X.
Yep, who formed the League of Evil X's.
Because he was so heartbroken over Ramona leaving him.
Yep. He's kind of evil. And he signs the band this without he signs Scott's band, who have moved on from him because he hates Gideon, and so they have young Neil, the guy who's just kind of tagging along with them, take over as the bassist. So they go play a gig for him, and then Scott realizes, okay, I'm gonna have to go and try to save Ramona from this guy. I forget what he did, but he gets like a 1-up, and then
I think it was defeating one of the Evil X's.
Or something like that.
Yeah. He gets a 1-up and then goes to confront Gideon and try to free Ramona.
He challenges Gideon at first and then dies.
Mm-hmm.
He draws, like, in the first fight with Gideon, in the big climactic sudden protagonist power activate moment, he pulls a sword of love from his
power
heart.
of love, just a katana bursts out of his chest.
He gets equipped with the power of love, and it's like this pink katana that's pixelated.
Yeah,
but he gets his butt handed to him by Gideon.
Well, and then Knives shows up, and she's like, "You stole Scott from me," and starts fighting with Ramona. And so,
doesn't Ramona have like a oversized hammer or something?
Yeah, that's kind of her deal. That she just pulls out of her jacket. So yeah, Scott gets beat by Gideon and dies and goes to this dream world where I think it's revealed that Ramona is under his control, of Gideon rather. And then he comes back. I think he has like some sort of revelation. And so he comes back because he has a 1-up, so he has an extra life. So he comes back, and this time, instead of the power, he realizes that it's sort of his mistakes that led him here and wrecked both of his relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like it starts him at the beginning of the fight again, where he first confronts Gideon, and he starts off. Knife shows up.
Exactly the same.
Well, he starts off exactly the same, and then he's like, "Wait a minute," and then apologizes to Knives and Ramona for cheating on both of them with both of them at the same time, and being a jerk.
Mm.
And then, instead of being equipped with the power of love, a sword, which is the power of self-respect, bursts out of his chest.
And it's like exactly the same as the power of love sword, but red.
Yeah. And so gets into another fight with Gideon and wins this time with the help of Knives and Ramona.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so after that, in the film, he goes off with Ramona to try again, basically. I think in the comic, he ends up with Knives again.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
There's this funny little beat where it's like after he beats Gideon, like Dark Scott shows up, and then there's like this, looks like there's going to be this confrontation. It's like, you first have to deal with the dark shadow of yourself, Dark Scott Pilgrim. And then it just cuts to where they're having like a friendly conversation. It's like, yeah, it turns out we actually had a lot in common. We're gonna meet for coffee on Tuesday, so, or something like that. And then he goes off with Ramona.
Yeah, that's kind of the plot.
Yeah, there's little character beats and other things going on in there with Scott's roommate, and different things going on too.
That's the general plot.
The general plot, yeah. So what were some of the things we liked about Scott Pilgrim versus the World?
Firstly, I think it does something really cool with the sort of source medium.
Mm-hmm.
It has like this sort of comic book stylized text that appears on the screen when they do certain actions. So like there's various onomatopoeia. Like when someone gets whacked, there'll be like a wham on the screen and stylized comic book lettering.
Yep, and swooshes.
Yeah, and just other stuff like that, which is really, really fun. And I think it takes the source material and incorporates it into a new medium in a way that really fits the style.
Yeah,
right.
And then you combine that with Edgar Wright's style of like camera movement and snappy editing. to create some sort of visual comedy. Like at one point, I think after Ramona and Scott split up, Scott is sitting in his house moping with his roommate, and then Knives comes up to try to talk to Scott and rings the doorbell. And or no, like she's on the phone with his roommate and he's like, "Oh, you're coming over?" Scott pops up and then grabs his jacket, and then his roommate answers the door and Scott jumps out the window behind him. A super comical little sequence there, but little things like that throughout the movie are pretty good.
And to the overall style of the film is, this comic was like an internet comic from like the late 2000s, so it's got this almost like web comics at the time. Newgrounds, that stuff was like a lot of old video game nostalgia, just like building on that, right?
Yeah.
It's
So this has
arcade.
very arcadey, video gamey elements,
And
like
it's,
injected into all the fight scenes and all the like visual gags.
it's
and all
structured kind of like a Zelda game.
or actually, or like a Mega Man game. You fight all the bosses till you get to the final boss and win. It's like,
But you hear
We
Zelda
also-
sound effects throughout the movie.
oh yes,
At
oh,
the
yes.
beginning, there's like sort of the intro music.
Well, that's because like one of the characters is playing on a DS in the background.
Yeah. And then I think there's like isn't there like the fairy song?
I think
at
like
one
during
point?
the dream sequence, there's
Yeah.
the Fairy Fountain song from Link to the Past.
And then
So like
and then he opens a box, I think, and it's like the chest
it plays like a jingle like that.
the chest jingle, the chest opening jingle. So like little details like that
So, like,
sprinkled in there.
Though the arcade elements plus the comic elements plus Edgar Wright's editing make this film like a really crazy, fun, colorful thing to watch. It's just like all the fight scenes are like one part comic book, one part video game, one part Edgar Wright.
And use of music too,
Oh, and
which Edgar Wright is
Edgar Wright's also really good at that.
yeah.
So it's just there's a lot of just really neat stuff that would have been like hard to capture or could have come off as forced or cheesy or
If
just
this
kind
is
of
like a serious comic book movie.
right. But
This movie
the way
doesn't
it's
take itself
implemented-
very seriously at all.
right. And I think it does so in a way that really complements and enhances the translation of the source material to movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other kind of big point I like is the way it treats Scott's journey. So he is like, in typical teenage fashion. Well, he's not a teenager,
22-year-old
but
teenager.
he still is like a very immature, not emotionally developed guy.
He moved out of his parents' house across the street into this sort of weird concrete bunker of a house. So he didn't get very far away from his from his childhood that way. That's sort of a way to symbolize that.
But
He hasn't grown up much.
He's very like emotionally underdeveloped, and that you see that in the way that he interacts with Knives and Ramona, and sort of not committing to, breaking up with Knives before he starts dating Ramona, which is,
Mm-hmm.
guys, if anyone out there is listening to this, do not ever do that.
Yeah.
They will
Big,
they'll both hate you, and you'll hate yourself. Just
and
don't.
you'll probably
Which
deserve it.
that's what happens in the movie.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like he faces those consequences, and that's part of his emotional and like growing up journey, like realizing how awful he was being.
Mm-hmm.
And really, it was not out of like, oh, I'm just going to take whatever I want. I'm going to get as much as I can. It was really coming from a place of insecurity.
Yeah.
He did not have an established self-worth, which you see play out in the final
And even
scene.
a damaged self-worth, because he had this his ex-girlfriend who had left him for another guy and dumped him hard, so he's still kind of reeling from that emotional roller coaster. And it's funny, like the little things they do to illustrate that, where he hasn't gotten his hair cut since he broke up with his girlfriend, and or I think it had only gotten cut once, and it was cut really badly. And so whenever somebody brings it up, like he'll suddenly have a hat on to cover it up.
Right in like the next shot,
It's
where
just
it
like,
cuts to him.
it's like, wait, who cut your hair? What are you talking about? Like in the next shot, he's wearing a hat. Sort
Just
of emphasizing
editing
that.
comedy like Edgar Wright likes to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you see him realize that, once he literally dies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm,
And then he's like, oh gosh, maybe the reason like I am really not capable of doing what I want to do is because I don't have self-respect.
And every now and again, his sister, Anna Kendrick, is that's the actor I'm thinking of.
Yeah, it's Anna
She-
Kendrick.
Very, very young Anna Kendrick. She kind of calls him out for like kind of his loserly ways every now and again in some rather comedic ways. And then there's also I guess another cameo more or less is April from Parks and Recreation, I think, who's constantly, I guess it speaks more to the visual style of the show, but she's kind of ripping on Scott and then swearing, but it bleeps her, and then there's like a little black box that shows up over her mouth every time she talks. It's like, how are you doing that? Random aside, but yeah, so like Scott's sister kind of calls him out for his shenanigans, and his roommate for his part also calls him out, even though his roommate isn't the most above board
It
person.
isn't much better.
Yeah. But
Yeah. And the way it resolves is not really like he's totally better now and he's just great, everything's fine. But you see that he's able to be comfortable with Dark Scott.
yeah,
So he's like he realizes his faults and the things that are not so great about him, and he accepts them and is willing
And
to
he's
dialogue
willing
with
to
them.
work with them.
Yeah.
Mhm. Instead of having a massive showdown and destroying Dark Link like you would in say Ocarina of Time, he manages to sort of reconcile with that instead of trying to destroy that part of himself, and sort of a more realistic, healthy way of approaching that. Because you can never completely eradicate your dark side, but you can come to terms with it and try to live for the better.
Mm-hmm.
As we often say in the seminary formation world, self-knowledge leads into self-acceptance to self-gift.
Mm-hmm.
You have to know who you are. You have to accept who you are in order to give yourself away.
Yeah. And that's sort of the place where Scott finds himself at the end of the film.
Right, because he couldn't properly court either girl because he really couldn't give himself.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't even really know who he was.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
much less accept who he was.
He lives in a very bare bones apartment with his roommate. I think there's like half of the room, like there's like this little shot where it's showing little labels for all the stuff in the room, like who it belongs to. And there's like a couple of little random things in the corner that are Scott's, and the rest is his roommates. So he's kind of not really doing much with his life.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have a job besides the band. Yeah, just kind of bumming across the street from where he grew up. Let's see.
Those are the two things I wanted to highlight. Do you guys have anything apart from that?
Nothing comes to mind that we haven't already brought up that won't also be brought up.
Like later in
Yes.
the
In the analysis.
this is part of the analysis, but
This
like
is
the
true.
final
In the
points.
final analysis.
The final analysis. What else did I like about the movie? We covered like the comedy, the visual comedy, the editing, the music,
Oh yeah. So
the stylization.
Do we have any criticisms of the movie?
Oh, there are criticisms.
there are
to
criticisms
be made
to be had
from
of
a
course.
moral perspective.
For
Let's
one
see.
thing, one of Ramona's evil exes is a girl played by I believe it's
Brie Larson.
Brie Larson.
No, Brie Larson was Scott's ex.
Was she?
That is her
I-
boyfriend is the vegan guy.
Oh, I thought Captain Marvel was Ramona's evil ex.
No, that was Brie Larson was with the vegan
Okay.
guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember she was in the movie.
Yeah.
I
Not
just
Brie
assumed it
Larson,
was
she was somebody
the
else.
part that was like, oh.
But she did have an evil ex who was a gal. And so that's
That's the thing in the movie.
That's the thing. So
And,
Mae Whitman was the evil ex.
oh, okay.
okay. And then Scott's roommate is of a similar sort of persuasion.
Basically
I
the
suppose.
same joke.
Yeah.
But I think both were like played off as jokes, but it's just
Yeah.
like, yeah.
And then on his first date with Ramona, things get a little intimate, but then not actually, completely, but still kind of inappropriate.
Yeah.
So there's sort of that ethos behind it. So different things, like different, I guess, deficiencies of the modern culture that seep their way in
Just because it's
tangible way.
late 2000s, early 2010s internet. That's the culture that was making comics at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it has that
That bleeds
stamp
into
on it.
What else? Also, it's a little weird. Yeah, he's dating Scott's dating a girl who's 17 at the beginning of the movie, and nobody questions it.
In fact, like at the beginning of the movie, like the opening starts out in Canada. There's a boy named Scott who is dating a high schooler. That's like how it starts, and everyone's like, "Wait."
I think it's meant to everybody. Well, everybody who he brings it up to is just kind of like, "Wait, what?" So it's kind of played off as like, this is a little weird.
But it's also, it could be like he hasn't really grown up.
Yeah. So he's not looking for somebody his own age. That could be one thing. I guess those are like the main things that come to my mind that should
they're just like,
meet with some criticism.
yeah.
It is Scott going with knives or not going with knives and going with Ramona, I guess, is a little bit controversial among fans.
Well,
of the
because
movie.
it's not like the comics and therefore bad.
Yeah. But I think they actually filmed it both ways, and then they had to make like a final decision.
Sure.
On
You
how.
can make an argument both ways about like the fundamental meaning of what going with either person would do.
Yeah.
It's like Ramona was this sort of symbol of the thing I want, and I'm going to chase after that thing because I'm immature and I don't realize, the gift that I have with me right now.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, Ramona
Just
could be seen as like a symbol of him growing up and sort of rejecting this immature side of himself.
Yeah.
So I don't hate either decision, but I'm not a fan of the comic before I saw the movie, so take that with a grain of salt.
I guess sort of a symbol of Scott's shallowness is a song he writes for Ramona, which is him just singing her name over and over again. And then he finishes it, and she's like, "Wow, I can't wait till it's finished." It's just kind of like, yeah.
And like Ramona keeps changing her hair.
Yeah.
Like it's a different color in every like fight scene.
I suppose we could dive into Ramona's character a little bit. We talked plenty about Scott, but what's Ramona's whole deal? She's got sort of she's at every turn she's had this mysterious past.
Right. I think one of her signature things is she's got this checkered past she's unwilling to open up about and kind of just wants to leave behind her.
Yeah. And she's reluctant to bring Scott into that.
Mm-hmm. Even though he gets swept up into it anyway.
Yeah, and she sort of, in that way, uses him to try to forget about it, but it keeps coming back.
By having him defeat her past demons for her.
Yeah, which creates some friction between the two of them. But she's constantly searching for somebody who's going to, I guess not, well, it sounds like, it's sort of implied from the stories that they all the exes, for the most part, kind of feel dumped by her. And so, like, she's kind of got that flaw where she keeps, like at first, these guys seem kind of decent, and they did these outrageous feats of heroism and epic fight scenes together. But But then she just sort of gets tired of them and moves on to the next thing.
So kind of an adrenaline junkie almost.
Yeah.
Just kind of looking for the next experience.
Mm-hmm. So she's got her own flaws, I guess. Trying to think, what are some redeeming qualities for her, though?
What were the redeeming qualities?
Yeah.
Honestly, she doesn't have a lot.
And she doesn't really seem to change much beyond her attitude toward Scott.
Yeah,
at the
she
end of the
opens up
movie.
more and more to him over the course of the movie.
And I think that's really only as a result of him, like, demonstrating that he's capable of hanging with the evil exes.
Yeah.
Like, otherwise, he's like, I don't know about this guy.
He's capable of literally dealing with her past.
Right.
And then there's Knives, I suppose. Her character is very fiercely loyal, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
She's like their band's #1 fan, and even after, and then once Ramona sort of steals Scott's gaze, as it were, she sort of fiercely fights to try to
get him back.
She wants to get at Ramona and get Scott back.
And she doesn't she like actually fight with Scott at some point with like a katana and everything?
I think
Or-
she
or
has
is that during
knives
right. Oh yeah,
because
does.
her name is Knives and she has knives. In the final fight scene.
Right.
Well, she dyes her hair to try to look like Ramona
like Ramona.
to see if that will maybe win Scott back. And then I think they're all sitting in this green room with Scott's ex and then the vegan guy. And I think doesn't he like headbutt the dye out of her hair or something like that? Something crazy like that. And like
forget
completely knock her unconscious. But yeah.
Yeah, her thing is she's kind of she's immature. She's 17, so she's like,
But at the end of the movie, she's able to let go of him.
right, or she's willing to let go of him.
Yeah.
So
She tells him to go to Ramona at the end.
right, which still up for debate whether that was the correct decision.
Mm-hmm. It's like you could go either way, more or less. I love Knives' sister that just kind of follows her around and is just sort of dealing with her kind of wildness with a more or less even keel. I found that kind of amusing. But yeah, I guess those are some of the discussion. I guess do we want to get into the transcendental analysis?
In just a moment, I need to go to the restroom.
Okay.
Okay,
Pause.
are we gonna stop our recording on our side?
And I'll mess up the file.
Okay, so we'll just
Behind the scenes featurette.
behind the scenes. We'll cut this out of the episode and save it for Patreon backers when we get one.
Yeah.
Or if we get one. Patreon
You need
has
backers to have a
apparently some weird
Patreon, I
stuff
guess.
to it.
Yeah.
So there's that.
We could set something up ourselves, but that would be a lot of work.
I mean,
When Riley gets up here, and then I think Andre, the weekend of his birthday, actually is going to be staying here to take the ACT.
Yep.
And maybe if we could get Isaac out here, or even if we could just hang out with Isaac at some point and just record some bumpers.
tell Isaac tell Andre when he comes over to take the ACT.
Just bring Isaac.
Bring
with him.
Isaac.
Yeah. I mean, we'd probably have Andre's birthday party like that weekend at some point, so I'm not sure how that.
What week is that? That's the
12th.
the 12th.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, Riley is back and sitting down in his chair and grabbing his headphones and putting his headphones on and leaning back and moving his microphone and adjusting
Did
his
you
microphone.
leave it recording?
Yeah.
Okay.
I figured
So-
that would make it easier for editing purposes.
That's what we
As
figured too.
did we.
So basically, the part where we're talking, but his has like a completely flat line. Actually, there was. What?
Andrew and I have enough beer for 6 holidays. Maybe for Michelle. That's 6 holidays worth of beer.
It
Anyway,
depends on whose family they visit and bring
this
it
is
to.
true. Anyway, all right.
Pause
So-
for editing.
Here we go, diving into... Okay.
Transcendental analysis.
Yes. Truth. What elements of truth can we as Catholics pull from Scott Pilgrim versus the world? You have
Don't
to sort of-
date two girls at the same time.
Yeah, there's a lot of things, truths by the opposite of what is done in the movie that we can learn.
But also, the truth by what is done in the movie is Scott needs to learn to know who he is and accept who he is before he can move on and start giving himself and having a real fulfilling
Like a
actual
proper
life.
relationship, yeah.
Proper relationships.
Yep. With his friends as well as the girls he's
Right.
interested
because
in.
by the end of the film, his relationship with the rest of his bandmates is back square and actually better than it was before, and they're a band again, and they're working better together than they ever have.
Yeah.
So it's not just for dating purposes; it's for other just being a person that has friends.
Yeah. Learning how to be a decent human being. He does sort of have even though he does have this tenacity and grit and combat, his ability to fight and win.
It's like Gurren
He's
Lagann.
got sort
It's
of an
just
indomitable
fighting
spirit.
It's
Sorry, headphones. What now?
it's
It's
like
like
Gurren
Gurren Lagann. It's all fighting spirit.
Oh yeah.
It's like he
Just upward
goes,
spirals. Just spiraling upwards.
He just kind of goes into Street Fighter mode and just goes ham on people because that's the part of the story we're in now.
Yeah. But he sort of has that indomitability about him that he's able to, even in his down moments.
Right. He has a goal.
Yeah.
And he is determined to work toward that goal, even if he doesn't have the
With
means
moments of
to get
discouragement.
to that goal.
Yeah. With moments of discouragement. that
Well,
kinda
yes,
hold him
because
back.
it's a movie and he's a character.
Yeah. Well, yes. You need to
He's
have
also
conflict.
physically a shrimp. He's
Yeah.
he's not a strong looking guy, so
Which is why it's kind of funny when he starts backflipping and throwing things around at people.
Yeah.
all the more
Um,
speaks to his determination, despite
You are-
his physical,
Shortcomings.
shortcomings.
Shortcomings, yeah. You are filled with determination.
That's a different thing.
Yes, a different thing. We'll get to that eventually. Goodness. What's some goodness that is in this movie?
Like I
For,
mentioned, Scott and Dark Scott.
Yeah, that was a good bit.
Mm-hmm.
It was a brief bit, but it was a good bit nonetheless.
It's
It was a very necessary bit to
Yeah.
cap off his development,
mhm,
and it's just
mhm.
so fitting.
Because he has this big climactic triumph, but he still has to deal with his dark side. And it could be in everyday life, you may have these triumphant moments, but then at the end of the day, you still have to deal with the dark side of yourself. You can't keep pushing it under the surface and, not coping or dealing with it.
Mhm.
You have to face up to that at some point if you're going to grow as a person. Yeah, let's see. Knives for her part. She kind of makes a sacrifice at the end of the movie to allow, let Scott be happy and pursue Ramona.
I think
So-
mostly in general, Knives is the highlight of goodness in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's not mature, but she's very loyal, and her heart's
In some
the
ways,
right
a bit
place.
of a little bit of a tragic figure in some ways.
But her loyalty is pretty admirable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because for a solid chunk of the movie, people are just kind of being jerks to everybody else.
Yeah.
And Knives included, but she's also she's trying her best to be her best for Scott, even
Yeah.
though he isn't showing
Reciprocate
interest
that.
in her.
Yeah. Let's see. What are other things? I guess that's the main. Those are some of the main
That's
things.
kind of the main points
Yeah.
of that.
Beauty, again, very very stylized movie, comic
ve-
book style, and
Very fun to watch. Like,
editing, music.
It's so colorful. It's like,
oh yes.
I don't know, like this kind of blue, pink, green color palette.
If
Yeah.
you've seen the comics at all, the original comic uses those kinds of bright, vibrant, contrasting colors, and so the movie incorporates them in really well to like make this really just vibrant colorscape come to life on.
Yeah, and
on
every
the
now and
screen.
again, there's sort of like this really stylized shot in the movie that's expressing something going on in a character's mind, or like sort of a transition, like Ramona taking Scott's hand, and then they kind of float over this black space to her door. Like little random moments like that, or like when Scott breaks up with Knives at the record store, so the whole screen behind her goes black, and she just sort of, like there's a close up on her face, like just sort of, like little frames like would be in the comic book. They're a
Probably
little more-
taken directly from the comic.
yeah, they're a little more stylized, but like the way they're incorporated in the movie, it's a little bit different. And it's kind of funky.
It's
but
like a live action cartoon.
yeah, it doesn't really take you out of it, and it kind of serves the purpose. It serves its purpose it's trying to carry
Yeah.
across. I guess too, like when Ramona's giving flashback stories about her exes, it shows literally like comic panels of their adventures together.
So the movie just has a style about it that's just really fun.
Word of the day for Scott Pilgrim style.
That's whenever we talk about an Edgar Wright movie. Let's face it.
Yeah, he has a style.
We've only talked about one other Edgar Wright movie.
Was Baby
On
Driver?
the podcast, yeah.
We've,
I mean,
we've
we've talked about
referenced
other
him.
Edgar Wright movies in our normal life after
Yeah,
watching them.
well, and then we've referenced him, I think, now and again. But yeah, we've covered Baby
primarily
Driver.
in the Baby Driver movie.
Yeah. I mean, we
episode
talked.
review.
Well, yeah. Unity. What do parts of this movie reveal about the whole, and how does it all come together?
It almost feels like, I mean, it doesn't almost feel like, it really does feel like this sort of wild, insane allegory of the journey of a kid's maturity, almost.
Mm-hmm.
It serves, everything is sort of oriented to that. All of the ridiculousness, all of the punching people and turning them into coins.
Yeah, the whole style of it is reminiscent of comic books and video games, very childish things. So the growing up past that, but framed in that way, they kind of go together in kind of a unique, interesting way.
Another little element I forgot sort of illustrates, like he goes to like this house party, Scott does, and he just drinks Coke Zero while everybody else is like drinking alcohol. Kind of a little, even though he's well over 21. That was kind of another little detail, yeah, where he's like sort of symbolizing his maturity level. Not that, drinking alcohol makes you mature, but,
Right. In fact, in some cases, it's less than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like we talk about the style of this film a lot.
It's very
But-
structurally sound from a storytelling standpoint.
But like everything comes together to serve the purpose of the story it's trying to tell, even
Yep.
if it's being told in the most zany, over the top way you could think of.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls,
Anything
do we have
else?
anything else that
Any
we
other
want?
discussion?
Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing as there's none.
I will entertain a motion to end the podcast.
Second.
The motion has been properly moved and seconded. All those
Yeah.
in favor say aye.
Well, we have a majority. Not like whatever.
Well, the movement and second would be majority, wouldn't it? In this particular case.
in this case, not like Riley would be a minority and object in this case. But thank you for listening to our nonsense. Such, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Palapapus. You can also listen to our podcasts on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Send us an email with your questions, comments, concerns, and complaints, or requests for future episodes to the palladiumpapist@gmail.com. We'll figure out what we're going to do about the Thanksgiving time. This will come up the week of Thanksgiving, but we'll figure out when the next episode.
If you're listening to this a year from now or 2 years from
it doesn't
last
matter.
year,
just click the next episode in the queue. But if you're listening to this in current year, in modern day 2020.
Well, it won't be modern day 2020 for another.
No, but if you are listening to this in modern day 2020, stay tuned for our next episode.
If you aren't listening to it in modern day 2020, the next episode's already out. You should go listen to it.
You're
it's probably
probably
pretty good.
Regardless, if you're in modern day 2020 or in the future modern day, whatever year.
If it's current year, listen to our podcast, please.
If it's current year, you're probably rolling your eyes that we're still doing Spit. So we bid you farewell, ladies and gentlemen. And for those who are living in modern day 2020, have a happy Thanksgiving from us here at the Palladium Papers. And American Thanksgiving. So, I don't know.
Probably already had one if you were Canadian.
Yeah.
Which, do we have any Canadian viewers? I don't think so.
We have one.
We have no viewers. We have listeners.
Yeah.
I said that wrong.
So
anyway.
Thank you, Canadian listener. We just talked about your countrymen today. You should be happy. This was for you.
This one goes out to all of our Canadian listener out there.
all two of the Canadian listener. All right.
All right.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.